Welcome to the OmniTalk Spotlight Series, the series that highlights the companies, the people, and the technologies that are changing the future of retail. Today is our grocery shop edition sponsored by 1010 Data. You can't deliver on tomorrow's omnichannel demands with yesterday's insights, so why plan your business this way? 1010 Data empowers retailers and brands to drive more successful outcomes in today's demanding marketplace by leveraging alternative data and retail analytics solutions to identify and plan for what's next. Visit 1010data.com or arrange a meeting at Grocery Shop's Spring Meetup for more information. Today, we're joined by Lindon Gao, the CEO of Caper. Lindon, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. This has been a topic that's just been kind of blowing up of late. So I can't wait to hear more about you.
I know. I feel like we've seen you at grocery shops past. Like I remember the very first grocery shop when we saw it, you or your team presenting the cart for the first time. And it was really the first time I think that we actually got to see in real life, like what the future smart cart might look like. But we're excited to have you on the show. I'd like to hear a little bit first about you and your background because you have a pretty impressive resume, Lyndon. Why don't you just give us a little bit background on you?
I wouldn't say it's an impressive resume, but I did start I did start out my career a little earlier than most. Is mostly because grew up in a fairly humble background, and I've always had a lot of time to myself growing up. So I started my first business when I was 14, doing gaming commerce, bought and sold game accounts and game equipment. Subsequently sold a business about 2 years later and started my second business, which is jewelry supply chain management.
Wow.
And I still run the company today as a majority shareholder, as a self-managing business, and no longer actively involved in the execution day-to-day of the business, as I focus a lot of my full time on Caper now. And after I graduated college, I joined Goldman Sachs as an investment banker. And after a year or so, I joined JP Morgan as a mergers and acquisitions banker. So I've had a fair share of entrepreneurial background, finance background, and back to entrepreneur.
How does someone get into smart carts then? How does that happen?
I
I remember that first grocery shop. It was like you and I, maybe it was like your co-founder or another person on your
Right.
team. You guys were
Man.
like strapping it. Like it was like, hey, let's get this thing out there and demo it. Like how did that happen?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, when I was working in banking, I was working over 100 hours a week, and that figured that if I was going to work 100 hours a week, I might as well do something that I'm a lot more passionate about. And and I kind of found my roots back to tech startups because it was a booming area. And when I was an investment banker, I really cover a lot of the retail sector. So I cover a lot of retail
You did.
merchants and acquisitions and research and so forth. And I realized that there's a lot of potential opportunities because a lot of retailers would implement SAP, for example, on their and they would start pricing the amount of savings that they have on their future projections. And I just realized that it's a really funny joke that I always tell my co-founder, if we had a time machine and we travel back to World War II in a time machine inside a grocery store, by the time you're done and you get there, you'll probably double check if your time machine was broken because you'd be like, hey, like the grocery store really hasn't changed too much since then. So I think that's kind of really where I started because I felt that it's an area that's just severely under innovated, and and there's a lot more that we could do there to bring a different level of ecosystem that never existed in physical retail today.
Yeah, it still looks like Piggly Wiggly, in a lot of ways. But why? But so why the cart though? Why'd you go there?
That's a very interesting question. So when we decided to build this physical retail technology, we first came to this idea of just installing a ton of cameras on the ceiling and installing smart sensors around the shelves. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's Amazon Go. But that was before Amazon Go, before the technology came out. So me and my co-founders were really, really excited about the idea. And we're like, all right, let's go do this. This is going to be the future of physical retail. But before we started building it, we thought maybe it's better if we start with questions. Maybe we should just go out there to talk to store owners to really see how they feel about this. So we did. Me and my co-founder Ahmed, we literally went to almost every single grocery store in New York City and New Jersey. So we know a lot of grocery stores around here. Sometimes we could go in to grab a free drink, but it's and when we started talking to them about our idea, the grocery store owners really they kind of freaked out. They're like, what, are you kidding me? Like, what are you trying to do here? You're trying to automate checkout, but you're renovating my entire store. Like, it took me, do you know how long it took me to install Wi-Fi and amplifiers in my store? It took me 6 months. I need to renovate my ceilings, redo my wirings. The electricians were in and out all day, every day. And how do you think a technology like this will work inside the store? And so that was when me and Amit kind of took a step back, and we thought about it, and we're saying, hey, you might be right. So, all the grocery store owners out there, what do you guys want? And they kind of just told me, hey, just bring me something that works. And we kind of just went off from that template. Okay, something that works. So what is something that is very common in the grocery store that everyone uses that we could just bring to a store? So we realized we could compact the computer vision and sensor fusion directly into a shopping cart. And that was the route that we went down to. And since then, it's we started building it, and now it's a lot bigger than it was before.
Yeah, wow. So it really kind of comes down to, it really kind of comes down to then kind of just this whole retrofit, build from the ground up, full computer vision or not, that whole kind of discussion again. You felt like that's just a very expensive undertaking for people to do at this point in time, and so there needs to be a way that existing operations can find something that kind of moves in this checkout free realm. That's essentially the philosophy you're describing there in terms of why you felt it was the right place to go.
Yeah, completely. Because we had talked to grocery store owners. They were very into the technology. They like it. They like the concept. They wanted to implement it. And grocery store, although they have thin margins, they do have the capital to innovate. But when we got to the operating discussion, which is how are we going to implement it? Our original idea was retrofit the store with a ton of cameras. Sensors didn't even come into a picture, but it would require the cameras to really label where all the items are inside the store. So imagine one camera is going to oversee probably a shelf of 200 items, and basically it would just be this person will sit in front of a computer and just click on each one of these products. Oh, this is Oreos. Oh, this is cereal, and so forth. And the retail store owners were just saying, hey, this is a lot of work. Like, maintaining the technology, the labor required to maintain the technology might actually be more expensive than the labor that you might potentially, cut out. So it was really a lot of practical discussions on how this could potentially work. And we ultimately realized that it was just a lot more difficult to retrofit the store, not only because of the infrastructure overhaul, but it's also because of the operational maintenance. And then, so we kind of took this back and we thought about how we could make this a lot scalable. And we realized that inside a shopping cart environment, it's a very, very small, compared to the size of the entire store, the shopping cart environment is much smaller. So if you monitor everything that goes on in that environment, number one is we're able to achieve a very stable, consistent environment, so that if we go from store to store, nothing's going to change. And that's a very big thing in the world of computer vision, which is when environment and lighting changes, a lot of things needs to get retrained. But here we have a stable lighting plus background environment, and on top of that, we're able to extract granularity. So that means that when items are being placed into the cart, we're able to extract textual information to that level of precision, so that we're able to differentiate the different flavors of Coca-Cola bottles. And that's the core part of another reason why we decided to go down the shopping cart route.
That's a really interesting point. I've never heard that before in terms of that controlled environment. I've heard that's incredibly important, but I've never heard of the shopping cart being the kind of root of a controlled environment. Like, is your thesis then? I know Ann wants to ask you about kind of Kroger and the announcement there too, because that's like huge news in this front. But like, is the thesis then that computer vision will never fully run a grocery store in the way it's in the ceilings and sensor fusion in the shelves, no matter what time in the future? Or, is this more of, or is there like a medium term versus long term solve? Like, how do you think about that? Like, or is it dependent on the retailer, the use case, the trip type? What's all going on there? I think it's a tough question.
It's a very, very, very interesting question. This is something that we're always consistently reevaluating our thesis and our technology as we're going along. And I think the the number one thing for this to work is return on investment. If
It has to be worth it for the retailers.
it has to be worth it for the retailer. So number one thing is if you're installing that amount of infrastructure, the amount of processing power that's required to process that amount of images is massive. So that means that the server room that you're building, the GPUs that you have is just at a different level. That in itself is already getting outside of the price range. And then the second piece is back to the operational piece, which is effectively grocery stores have 50 to 100 unique SKUs inside the store. At any given time, they have probably 500 to a million items inside the store. They process over 1,000 transactions a day. So how can you develop a process such that we're able to very easily maintain the process within 1 second? You don't need to add additional operating labor into labeling the images, into training the images, and into differentiating the difference between, I don't know, a cherry Coca-Cola versus a regular Coca-Cola, if their positions on the shelf are swapped, right? So these are all the very, very important questions that we need to ask before. And it just, I don't see this happening within the next 3 to 5 years. And that's why I think right now we have the best solution in the market in terms of scaling very quickly and deploying these immediately into the retailers and stores.
Well, Lindon, I want to go there for a little bit too and talk about, the progression. Like you were in some smaller grocery stores in Brooklyn, in New Jersey, in that general vicinity for a while. And you just made a pretty large announcement, a partnership with Kroger to actually start piloting these in some of their stores. And I mean, this is pretty big time. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of got to that point and what you're hoping to kind of get out of this pilot. What's next? What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, so we started probably two years ago with a smaller grocer around the New York area, as you mentioned. Very, very thankfully, our first enterprise client was Sobeys. Not very well known in the U.S., but they're one of the largest grocery chain in Canada, and we started working with their stores in Toronto, and we started learning a massive amount. We realized that really going from a small chain, like a small one store or a demo store, into a production environment at the enterprise level is a whole different story.
Sure.
because the amount of infrastructure that we need to accommodate for, the amount of corner cases that we need to tackle at the enterprise level is just massive. And so we really did a lot of our learning along the way with Sobeys over the past year. And Kroger approached us probably I kind of forgot, but definitely more than 6 months ago, with the initial discussion of potentially implementing this technology and trying this out in their stores. And I think what really had accelerated the process was, definitely, COVID is a part of it, because there's the contactless need from the shoppers. Average grocer, in the cashier industry, you see more than 20% of the cashiers being diagnosed positive with COVID before. So they really want to not only protect their employee and their staff, but also protect their shoppers, because grocery is seen as essential work, and we want to make the environment safe. So that's one of their biggest effort, which is to make sure that they're keeping everyone safe. And then what has really also been a catalyst in this process is also that Amazon Go, which is I would probably categorize them as the pioneer in the physical retail automation space, decided that they were, instead of launching Amazon Go in Amazon Fresh, they built Amazon Dash Cart, which is basically the smart cart version of Amazon Go in the physical store inside a grocery store. And that instantly really validated to a lot of people, the thesis that we have always had, because we have always talked about how Amazon Go it's difficult to scale into a larger environment. And it takes a long time to scale it too, because Amazon Go, since launching until today, is probably 2 to 3 years, they only launched 27 stores. There are certain levels of scalability constraints there. Whereas when DashCart launched, it's just launching with Amazon Fresh wherever they go. So in the LA area, they probably already have a dozen stores launched within the past 3 months since they made the announcement. So I think a lot of retailers saw that, and that validated a lot of their concerns and worries, and that was also what kind of accelerated the project. So we've been very, very fortunate to have Kroger as our client. They're very, very, very smart, very nimble. They move really, really quickly. And so far, since we have launched, we've seen very positive results from the customers. We've seen increasing momentum in usages, very high customer feedback. And going forward, we're heads down working with Kroger's to make sure that they love our technology, their shoppers love our technology, and potentially we're hoping to roll out in more of their stores.
How many stores are you guys in now?
So right now we're only in one store in their Ohio, Cincinnati.
In Ohio, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Curious too, you brought up Amazon Go. I think it's interesting too. Yeah, my thesis, Ann and I's thesis has always been that the thing kind of caps out at 10,000 square feet. I think that's where Go Grocery is, right? Otherwise, they'd be doing it, right? And I think that kind of goes to your whole points about the server room and the cost of technology and all that. Mm-hmm. Question though for you, like how does the fact that they're now licensing the Amazon Go tech to, say, the airport operators, how does that make you think about your strategy in terms of which segments and verticals of retail you start to look at, specifically? And I know you have some other things that you guys are working on too. Like, how did that announcement change or, maybe cement strategically what you guys were thinking about, if at all?
So we don't see Amazon as a direct competitor. Definitely they're in the market working with a lot of people. And first of all, obviously this market is very big, so there's room for a lot of different players in this market.
And they pose a competitive threat to a lot of people too, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And at the same time, I think Amazon is a very large organization. There's a lot of competitive nature between Amazon and other retailers out there. So it's very difficult for other retailers to want to adopt Amazon's technology in their store, because then Amazon gets access to a certain level of data that they probably want to stay hidden from Amazon.
And Lindon, I was actually thinking more from a trip type. Forget Amazon, just the fact that now you've got, airport operators, quote unquote, retrofitting their stores with, the computer vision in the ceilings and the sensor fusion in the shelves. Like, does that impact in terms of like, hey, this is, convenience goes one way, this is really for full scale grocery store above 10,000 square feet? Like, how are you thinking about that? That was more what I was trying to get at.
Got it. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we've been thinking about, which is, what do we do in an environment that doesn't require a shopping cart? Because we have a very sleek core technology out there. So we decided to develop this a checkout counter, which is basically Amazon Go compacted into a checkout counter, where you could directly just place items onto a counter, and we leverage computer vision to identify everything there. So these can be implemented in any retail format. So currently we're already launched with one of the largest convenience store chains in the world, but unfortunately we cannot announce who that is yet.
That's fascinating.
Leave it out there.
Wow,
yeah.
Interesting. All right.
And yes, and so far it's very interesting. This also goes to a little difference between the retrofit and what we have been building, which is, if you were to retrofit a store, there's no way for you to scale very, very quickly, because you need to install the tag and all that stuff. We went from the first store to the fourth store in one day. So we literally launched 3 stores in one day. We just literally moved the checkout counter from our warehouse into the store, place it there, plug it into the power cord, connected to a Wi-Fi, and everything is up and running. So it's very extremely nimble, and it provides essentially the same level of experience with versus the full store retrofit. Because if you really think about it, if a customer already has an app, all you need to do, if you already have an app, all you need to do is just place the items onto the counter and then just grab it and leave, and that's it. So so we felt that it was, from an experience perspective, that's very, very similar. And on top of that, we're able to deploy this very quickly with retailers. And we've been seeing a lot of traction in the convenience store space, in the cafeteria space, in the beauty space. So that allows us to really scale ultimately into a lot more stores.
Got it. And so it's still, that's how it works. It still pairs with an app. So it's kind of like it's kind of just like or wait, sorry, go ahead.
No. It doesn't pair with an app. I'm just saying hypothetically, if you're like, for example, in an Amazon Go store, you'll need to download an app.
Sure.
But with the checkout counter, you just need a credit card. So you just insert your credit card and then you could just pay and leave. But if you have an app, maybe it's slightly easier. You just place it onto the counter and then grab it and leave. So.
Okay, got it. So it's kind of, it's not that different. It's kind of a new version of like a self-checkout machine then, but it sits at the counter or somewhere in a convenience store and you place your items, small basket probably, and you just walk out the door. Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's a cool video. You guys have a cool video of it too, right? We'll try to get that in our show notes as well.
Please do.
Okay. Yeah, we'll try to do it. I think it paints the picture a little bit better too for everyone.
For sure.
Well, Lindon, as we kind of close this up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what kind of clients you're going after, what kind of experiences you're going after. You talked about the convenience store angle, you talk about large grocers. What's next for Caper, and how are you going to kind of prioritize the next few months and year?
So I think right now because of a lot of the, COVID has really accelerated the space on top of what I mentioned, Amazon Dash Carts, and a number of catalysts here. We've seen a tremendous amount of inbounds from different types of retailers wanting to potentially launch the technology in their store. So really for us right now, we have limited capacity. We're a Series A company, so we're not too big. So we have about 60 people or so. And we're really just focused on some of our top clients and also retailers who are willing to move very, very quickly. So that's going to be our top target. We don't have a particular constraint as to what type of retailers we want to work with, because we could work with any, it could be as small as a bodega to as big as a gigantic Walmart. So that range is very wide, but most of our efforts will be dedicated to very innovative retailers who are willing to move quickly.
And what, if anything, are you seeing would maybe keep people from being one of those like early adopters or really taking this whole cashierless checkout approach? Like what are they telling you if they're not quite ready to bring this on? Is it cost? Is it the product itself? Like what kind of feedback are you getting?
We usually don't see a lot of barriers once the customer have interest, because from effective cost per square foot perspective, to our ability to scale, to our operational and technology maintenance, it's all very, very low maintenance. So we always make sure that we help retailers get their return on investment when they work with us. Typically, retailers who are not fairly receptive are slightly more on the later stage adopters. Obviously, you're going to have a curve of adoption with earlier adopters. These are definitely the more innovative companies, which are the ones that we are focused on.
Right.
And then other ones are kind of more in a wait and see mode. It's like, hey, I want to see how this plays out before I start pouring in more resources, which is also fair. So right now our focus is just to make sure that we prove it to them that this is going to be the future,
and do it in a real cost-effective way. I'm curious, Lindon, too, as you're having those conversations, are they trying to find additional ROI at all from operational use cases? I mean, we've really talked mainly here about the consumer-facing applications of the computer vision and, whether it's the cart or the counter. Are retailers, I'm curious, are they looking at operational use cases as well in regards to this with you, or are you guys staying clear of that? Just want to get your thoughts on that.
So this is a great question. In my opinion, it's this whole overall retail is a gigantic ecosystem. Like if I go out there and I talk to investors and retailers, I wouldn't say we're a shopping cart company or we're a self-checkout company, because it's a very, very small piece of what we do holistically. It's just like when you walk into a grocery store, maybe you spend 5 minutes at the checkout, but during your 40 minutes of shopping trip, you're spending 35 minutes around the store. Mm-hmm. So that definitely, there's a huge element of consumer facing aspect of it, which is we have seen we're able to increase average basket size by more than 18%. Mm-hmm. So customers are interfacing and interacting with our cart screen as they're shopping around the store. So that means that we're able to guide their purchase decisions. If you bought milk, I could recommend you cereal. Mm-hmm. So that that increases average basket size and also increases their top line. And on top of that, it's an area where we see a lot more interactive opportunities. And also on the operation side, there has been a lot of talks and suggestions from the retailers where they want us to install a camera that's facing the shelf. So as customers installing their cart, we could detect out of stock. We can also detect where all the items are inside the store, because a lot of times retailers don't even know where their items are inside the store. So and to even further that, a lot of our computer vision could also be help leverage in warehouse applications to help their warehouse management a lot more to become a lot more efficient. So these are a lot of these ongoing conversations, but at least for now, we're making sure that we get our roots cemented. And I think once we get our carts in there and becomes a long-term fixture inside the retail environment, then we could start creating the AI operating system, the entire ecosystem, to help both the shopper-facing component and also the operating component.
Got it.
That makes a lot of sense. Lindon, if people are interested in finding out more about Caper, if they want to learn from you, get your theories on retrofitting versus putting carts in stores or counters in stores, or see demos of the product, where's the best place for them to get in touch with you?
Yes, so they could definitely come visit our website at www.caper.ai. And you could also find me on LinkedIn at Lindon Gap.
Awesome. We always love when people do that. Well, hey man, thanks so much for that conversation. That is really enlightening. We're still trying to piece together this whole smart card thing. I know early on I was kind of, you probably know that too. I was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure about this, but it's starting to grow on me a little bit, and I'm trying to learn as much as we can here as we go. So it's good to make your acquaintance too. And I like a lot of what you said today. There's some definitely unique points that I hadn't heard before too, especially the controlled environment of the card itself, and in terms of what computer vision requires too. So kudos to you. And even the trip type things, I think, is becoming much more of a fascinating part of this conversation as well. So again, for everyone listening, Lindon Gao, CEO of Caper, check him out. We're doing this for grocery shops, so drop him a note. You can connect with him on LinkedIn, like he said. And everyone listening, as always, be careful out there.